Okay. So to start off, just standing for a moment or two, settle into your posture. Remember, you know, when it's live or watching the recording, it's been very warm around here recently. And as always, do take into account the conditions that you're practicing in, and of course, as always when you're exercising, particularly in the heat, remember to take regular sips of water. And as you stand, just get a sense of how it's possible to find a way of standing and a way of moving that actually helps you to dissipate the heat that can build up in your body. Weights a little bit forwards, hips just settling back. And at the same time, the awareness of the posture, which we'll go into a little bit more detail later, particularly for those of you less familiar with this. But that attention to detail also has the effect of quietening, calming the thoughts, your attention. So it's an important starting point and something that we want to try and maintain all the way through. Before we look more closely at that, just bringing your attention to the center part of your body and turning very gently, and just try and use the movement as an indication of how much space there is for movement within your body. And again, remember, when it's cold, the body contracts and we can feel the tightness. Less obvious perhaps is when it is very hot, tissues swell up, joints swell up, and that also restricts the movement. So always taking great care at the start of a session when you begin to build up. And a good question is just to ask yourself what feels like you're going to need at this point. Tai Chi and Qigong are a wide spectrum of practices and a wide spread of purpose and outcome. And as you get more experienced in these arts, you can begin to focus your attention and your intention in particular ways. If you're feeling quite kind of sleepy, then you might focus on waking up a little bit. If you're feeling, if you're busy and maybe feeling a bit agitated, then almost the opposite of that. And a lot of this is about bringing our attention into the body and developing an intentional quality to it. Sometimes the same exercise might actually take on a different feel with a different set of intentions at that moment. I will sometimes go out and practice with an idea that a particular exercise, a particular thing that I want to build on, cultivate. But I might not actually do that on that occasion, because as we start to move, we notice other things that maybe take a priority. And overall, in the long term, if we want to develop these arts, we want to have these goals, these things that we want to build on, that we'd like to improve on. But it doesn't have to happen every day. Just see if you can let your body settle into a nice, regular rhythm. Arms hanging down, feeling quite heavy as they swing from your shoulders. And as you begin to move, most of the time you'll find that the movement itself begins to create a bit more space, and we want the movement to fill that space in the way that water might fill up a hollow in the ground and then begin to dissolve it and erode it away a little bit to make it bigger. And the same kind of patient approach to be taken with with our own bodies when we begin to move. Just letting your breathing come naturally as it will feel more comfortable. And as you become more aware of your posture, particularly those of you previous experience of this, that's when we start to look more at the details of the posture, refining, cultivating the qualities that we feel are appropriate. Try and feel that your body's supported. Clearly, your feet and your legs will support you, and we try and drop our weight before rooting down again. We'll look a bit more closely at that in a few moments. Want your back to support the front of your upper body. So try not to pull your belly in. Notice whether you're sort of habitually tightening in your chest or your shoulders, and see if you can maybe just have an idea of releasing that. And even to the extent that we can start to become aware that within the body, the first instance, it'd be good to focus on the big bones of your skeleton. There is also support coming from within. We don't need that tightness, that stiffness in our shoulders or our neck or wherever we're feeling it, simply to maintain an upright position and to maintain our shape. So we gradually become more confident in the way that we're naturally supported. Raising your arms a little bit. One of the constant aims, one of the constant intentions in these arts is to move in such a way, to maintain a posture in such a way that we encourage movement within the body, the actual physical movement of the joints and so on, the circulation of blood and energy beginning to happen without resistance as much as possible. And then put one foot forwards, keeping the width of your step, and just gently move your weight forwards and backwards and let your upper body turn in response. It could turn either way for various reasons, so it's really just to bring your feet and your legs and the transfer of your weight into the equation of the movement. We start to get a feeling of, one way or another, our whole body engaged in what we're doing, from feet to head and arms and hands. But also, again, when we think about, those that deeper support from the area of the skeleton and so on, in terms of the depths of the body. When one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is engaged in that motion. And then change over, not too long a step. Again, we will look more closely at this posture later. Shake out. Standing back in the parallel stance, we have our feet below our hips to give maximum support to our hips. So we imagine parallel lines going down through the body, either side, and maybe a third line going down through the middle. We're not trying to reproduce those lines physically, they don't exist in real life. It's just a way of orientating ourselves with the ground and with the pull of gravity through our body. And just begin to rock your weight forwards and backwards, seeing how far you can move before you start to stiffen up or you have to take a step. And that will turn out, for most of us, it will be roughly between the ball of each foot in the front part of our heels. And we also begin to look for some kind of midpoint, some kind of point of equilibrium. If you imagine this as the center line of the body, as we go forwards and backwards, gravity pulls it down, gravity pulls it down. In theory, rather than in practice, we can find a sort of central point where everything is more stable. And if we also imagine like guy ropes from a tent attached to that, then we can begin to see how we can find an upright stance without straining the soft tissue of your body, particularly muscles, tendons, ligaments, being the equivalent of the guy ropes, you could say. So just allowing your body to come to rest wherever it finds its own natural sense of being centered. Ideally, that would be a little bit forwards in your feet. That gives you slightly more energy. And also, if I come a bit closer, I'll show you here. If you watch my hips here, I'm exaggerating, I'm further forwards than I ought to be really. But our body wants to be upright, has mechanisms to do that, trying to avoid putting our shoulders back to create the impression of being upright, but rather just allowing our hips to settle back. A slight curve in your knees. We do take deeper stances, but not at the moment. And a lot of this is a process of what I would call releasing, of softening, yielding, allowing gravity to work the body. The feeling, if I show you here, if you see my fist, if I squeeze tightly, I can feel the tension going up to my arms, all very uncomfortable. If I simply open up the fist a little bit so there's a little space between the legs, I can get my finger down it. I've still got the shape of the fist, but I haven't got the tightness. And again, this helps us to engage deeper elements of the body, not just a restricted sense of muscle. And then, very gently, being careful with your knees, letting your hips drop back a little bit more. Try not to stiffen up in your belly or your lower back, because your pelvis will make quite subtle adjustments as you drop your hips back and as you push up. This is rooting down. The releasing begins to drop your weight. That is really the heart of rooting down. And then just to deepen that, we let the hips go back a little bit more and then feel ourselves being pushed up. So we yield to the pull of gravity, and that is said to load the legs. Imagine your legs as being like a set of springs that eventually will just push you up. And we have this very characteristic cycle of movement, cycle of energy, down with the pull of gravity, coming up with the springiness of the body. And this is a constant cycle, whether or not we're actively dropping our hips back, so long as the hips and knees are soft, that downward movement is less restricted, and so that enhances the upward movement. It's very, very much an ongoing cycle through all of the movements. But bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, the expansion upwards, pushing the ball up, and then hands draped over the ball as though the ball's in water and you're just trying to drop it down into the water. Expanding and contracting. Trying not to strain at any point. Don't go down too far. It depends on how well conditioned your legs are. Obviously, with practice, we can go down into much deeper stances. But what we're really trying to do is to encourage our center of gravity, which would normally sit about the center of the body, possibly even higher up, to actually drop down towards and possibly even through the ground. The lower your center of gravity, the more stable you are. The lower your center of gravity, the less likely you are to strain in those areas above where the center of gravity is. And slightly longer term, the lower your center of gravity, the more powerful the energy that rises up from that, the expansion of the body. Remember, we're trying to let whatever movement is happening in the body to flow without resistance. And so, as well as the physical aspects of what we're doing, we're trying to create an environment within the body where the energy can flow and harmonize quite naturally. And to do that, we need to be aware of how our body is responding to gravity and other factors. Bring our intentionality to the movement. So we have these three pillars of Tai Chi, the three treasures of body, mind, and movement, energy, beginning to also harmonize. And the benefits of that harmony are felt again in mind, body, and energy. So rooting down, really the first major principle that we would work on in Tai Chi, and probably the last for most of us, trying to keep that sense of the low center of gravity. But we're going to change the exercise. Same thing in hips and legs, turning your hands out, letting the movement push your hands up. This is the wild goose. So if any of the imagery that we use offers some kind of quality for the movement, then it's useful to make use of that. It's one of the ways in which we connect body and mind. But if the images don't actually work for you, don't chase after them. Not every image will work for you, and some take longer to develop an understanding of. Use whatever is appropriate at the moment. The wild goose, with this lovely image of the bird in flight, may offer qualities of a smoothness of movement, a grace of movement, possibly creating a memory, a feeling in your mind, which our intention begins to offer to the body. Think of intention as a sort of instruction from mind to body. Feel this, do this, act like this. Just be aware that there can be a lot of unconscious intentionality. We're really talking about a very conscious focus of intention in these arts. And then letting your hands drop down, crossing in front of your belly. This is called parting the cloud. Elbows pushing out, drawing your fingers around in a nice smooth circle, and then down again. People with more experience, it's very easy to take these early exercises for granted, but this is where we have a real opportunity to cultivate certain elements. I was just talking about that quality of intentionality. Tai Chi and Qigong are always intentional. And that process of taking some ownership and focusing our intention takes practice that will affect our minds, practice that will affect our brain and nervous system, as well as the obvious sort of physicality of muscles and so on. So this is an opportunity to really see if you can maintain an intention with something that might actually be coming to you quite habitually by now. You've done these exercises a great deal. Try not to just do the movement and let your thoughts wander away with what you do for the rest of the day or what happened at the weekend. Bringing your attention back. Now, let your hands drop down, and then next time you push up, focusing on one side of your body, expanding, wind your arm around as though you're plucking a soft fruit from the tree, and pull down. Change your attention to the opposite side of your body and push up, expanding from the ground up into your fingertips. Pull down. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Still sinking down, pushing up, getting used to that feeling of the two directions of movement working through your body. As you push up, eventually the pull of gravity will overtake the momentum from the expansion of your body, from your legs. And as you sink down, eventually that springiness in your legs will overcome the pull of gravity. So there's a balance, a harmony that develops between these two directions. One more time on each side. Just let your arms hang. Your legs are aching, you give them a little shake. And then just trying to maintain that top position for the next couple of exercises. We don't go up and down, but neither do we want to stand locked up. This blocks that two-directional movement, that cycle of energy. Knees are tight, hips are tight. So again, if you can bring your weight a little bit forward, that's fine. Just allowing your hips to drop back as though you're just sitting on the edge of a table or something like that. A feeling of lower back, hips and buttocks overhanging just a little bit. So it will be strong in the thigh muscles in particular. And from this position, bring your hands to the sides next to your hips. Just the first and last part of this little set to begin with, bringing your hands up slightly in front of your body, just a little bit above your head, and then back down. Do that again, raising, letting your elbows drop, pushing out sideways, and back. So as you push your hands up, just get a sense for your back, lengthening gently, as though somebody were massaging your back through its length. And then as you push out sideways, the same kind of sensation, but more across your body. So subtly different. Try not to pull your hands behind. So here you can see where my hands are. They're here, not here. And when I push out to the sides, they're here, not here. Here, slightly in front of the shoulders, not slightly behind. This means that you continue to feel the support of your back, and it leaves the upper body much more soft, much more space. Again, you may find that there's an effect here when you breathe in, sense of movement within your upper body. So this time, without losing those qualities, I'm going to add a stage or two stages really. That as you push out, there's a slight turn in your center, and that changes the direction of movement in your arms. You come back, bringing your hands back to your hips, take your time, turn the other way, and back. And then facing forwards and pushing out. Pushing in 4 directions. So each stage of the movement has itself 2 stages, an expansion and a contraction that brings your hands and your attention back to this central part of your body, the area between your pelvis and your waist. this is a key part of the body. We learn to bring our attention here, to have the intention to let that part of the body drop towards the ground. Remember the dropping of your center of gravity. And we begin to find that any movement in the center part of our body has an effect through the whole body. Traditionally described as being like the hub of a wheel. And it becomes one of the primary focuses of our attention when we're looking to quieten, to settle, make that connection to the ground. So this is a useful exercise to really encourage us with this process of returning our attention there on a regular basis. Notice whether you're inclined to speed up or to maybe just go halfway when you do return to the center. We often overlook that aspect. Tai Chi Chuan follows the principle of yin yang, this combination, this blending of opposites into one unit. So we could argue that here is a yang movement expanding, here is a yin movement contracting. And again, it's one of the overall intentions in the practice. We want to look for a harmony, a balance between yin and yang. This is a good exercise for just gently encouraging that sense of an internal flow. It's simple enough that we can pick up the pattern of the movement fairly quickly. The movements are regular, not Tai Chi, not all the movements are as regularly rhythmic as this one, but this one is. So it's a good exercise to remember and to practice. And last time, pushing out to the sides. Your hands come back, drop down, just aware of the weight of your arms for a moment. And with the next feeling of expansion on one side, pushing your arm out, swinging it up until it's in line with the center line of your body, in line with your nose, and your sternum, your navel, down to a half circle around the body. Elbows soft, fingers drawn back a little bit, almost like you're standing beneath the arch of an old church door and just sliding the palm of your hand around that. An expansion similar to Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. A little bit stronger perhaps because of the rotation in the shoulder. And then, if it's comfortable, you add the turn. Sometimes when we're doing these movements, especially as we develop them, we become aware of areas of blockage, of tightness. In the first instance, we would look to let the movement flow around those areas, to follow the path of least resistance. We may also think about posture, movement, other factors which some of you may know. But the first response is always, can we find a way to enable, to intend the flow? Now change sides, noticing any difference between one side of your body and another. Other things that we might want to do to release those blockages, certainly, thinking about posture, do we actually have posture still, or have we stiffened up in our knees or our hips? Some of you may remember me using different images, different ideas, intentions to actually perhaps go a little bit deeper into those areas. If it's comfortable, add in change. And once again, just letting your arms hang. Try and just get a measure again for your posture. One important element here is, again, with the air descending, particularly your pelvis, the pelvis feels fairly level. You could imagine that your pelvis is like a bowl of water. You want to hold it level, otherwise you'll start to spill the water. But the next two exercises will change that, again demonstrating the huge significance of the center part of the body. If as I stand, I push my hips back, so I'm tipping the water forwards, then actually notice how my head goes forwards. If I reverse that and I tilt the bowl backwards, my head goes back. We're going to use this movement in the next two exercises. Just feel the connection between your hips and your shoulders. I'll try and do the next two exercises quite big, if my body lets me. But only move as far as you're comfortable. The key thing with this exercise is not some kind of strong stretch forwards or anything, but rather to just begin to appreciate, again, the significance of the center part of the body, not just for the horizontal movements that we've already explored, but for the overall alignment of the body. Can we let the hips drop? Can we let gravity just pull our hips down? So rather than straining in our back and our shoulders to maintain an upright position, we actually do the opposite. We let the hips succumb, to yield to the pull of gravity, and use the natural alignments of hips to shoulders in our body so that the head is gently drawn up. So this time, as you tilt the pelvis forwards, drop your weight a little bit down into your knees, and then let the hips come up and push up. Be careful with your back and your knees. So it's this, hips go back, I'll drop down. This is where it's quite strong on your back, of course. Hips drop back, and that brings my shoulders upright. Very strong in the legs here, and then I push up. 1, 2, and 3. That rising movement, that rising energy from the ground, pushing you up. This time, bring your arms into the movement. This is an exercise called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Feeling that expansion up into your fingertips, gently extending, just very aware of the sensations in your back. Rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Moving as far as you're comfortable and making sure that there's still that space within the body. Feel as though you could have moved a little bit further. That's particularly important with these stronger exercises, but is important anyway to maintain the spaciousness and the potential for movement within the body. We're not in these exercises trying to stretch. Do one more of these. And then, still with a strong focus of attention, that center part of your body, hands come to that position in front of your belly, turn, push the hips back so your hands are pushed forwards again, swing across and back to the upright position. And reverse that, turn in, push the hips back. This is called polishing the table. Look from the back, you can see what my hips are doing more easily. Again, noticing how gravity will work on your hips and help you come to an upright stance without the strain in your back or your shoulders or your neck, your chest. Maintaining that inner environment that allows for movement. And then just stand. Give your legs a shake. Water. Good. So there's a characteristic feel that we look for in Tai Chi, characterized very much in this initial stance, which then, as we get more used to this, feeds into our memory, and that memory feeds into our intention. So there's an underlying intention, what we might think of as a subconscious intentionality, not something we have to directly think about, but something that we're aware of in the back of our minds. We're always maintaining that spaciousness within the body, and through that, cultivating the development of the movement itself, flow, and so on and so forth. From this position, then change into the forward stance again. Turn one foot out, and you could be prepared to play around with that angle, and then imagine your other foot on a line and step straight forwards. Excuse me. This is a roughly square stance, like you're standing on the opposite corners of a square paving slab or something like that. And then beginning to transfer your weight from front to back, moving from the ground, not from your shoulders. Keep your shoulders in line with your hips. As you get more experience of this, becoming more aware of the percentage of weight that goes into your legs. When we're in the back leg, 70% of the weight in the back leg. When we go forward, 60% of your weight in the front leg is what we're looking for. One of the very common, almost universal images that we use in these arts is that we're moving through water. Moving through water, moving like water. Moving through water means that there's a sense of resistance, a soft resistance. This helps to build internal strength. It also helps to build the flow of the movement. And if we apply that to this, imagine being in water up to shoulder height, then at first when we do this, instead our upper body simply sits on the hips. It's quite passive in a sense. But actually, if I was in water, the pressure of the water would hold my shoulders back at this point. I don't want that to happen. So with that image comes a sense of change, of movement, very subtle in the upper part of my body. A lot of these changes in the body are too subtle for direct instruction. We can tell ourselves to lift an arm or to lower it, but the subtle adjustments of pelvis, the subtle changes as we move through water and so on and so forth are mostly too subtle to really kind of think about. So this is where the imagery can be really useful in Tai Chi, because it creates an impression for the body of, for instance, being in water. This is a process we see a great deal. Happens all the time to us in daily life. If you've ever gone to pick up a bag, it's laying on the floor, maybe expecting it to be heavy because there was something in it, not realizing that somebody had already emptied out the bag. You're going to pick up the bag with the expectation, the idea that it was going to be heavy, and you go, oh, it's heavy. Somebody's emptied it. Or you go to push a door open and it sticks, and you push it a second time, but you push it slightly differently. Your body's already adjusted to the stronger resistance. And so this idea that our intention has a direct and almost immediate effect on how our body functions is really important. And imagery can be a really important aspect of directing intention. Settling back and then just raise your front toe. So more of your weight settles in. You can have the front foot slightly turned out. Now go forwards. Push your back knee forwards so your heel. So sometimes we make use of that imagery when it's appropriate. Sometimes we might have an idea, a direct instruction, move the weight from front to back, for instance. Other times it can feel much more intuitive, that there's no need for an intermediary between body and mind, that the blending of those two elements that we think of as being separate but really aren't, can mean that things just happen. And I think particularly again for people with more experience, that's an important development. Now this time, settle into your back foot, try to hit the pelvis level and just bring front foot in, step out, put your heel down, lower your toes, just gently press into the ground. Go forwards, bring the foot back. This time it's the ball of the foot that goes down first and back. The term that we often use is that we plant the foot. So if you plant something, plant a seedling in the ground or in a pot, you put it in, you do whatever you need to do, and you just gently press the earth in around it. It wouldn't be a strong movement. We want to try and do the same thing when our foot touches the ground, to really feel the connection to the ground. And not just to feel it, but to really own it, to really make it feel as though we are rooting down already through that foot, that it's kind of melted into the ground slightly, giving us a very strong foundation for the stepping. We'll try that on the other side. From the parallel stance, you can imagine parallel lines working through your foot, if you like. Turn one foot out, step forwards, hip width with the other one. Starting first of all with the smooth transfer of the weight. The legs fill in and empty in alternate. So I mentioned earlier this cycle of movement of energy downwards into the ground as we root down, yield to the pull of gravity, and that strong sense of a movement up from the ground. Still want to be feeling that. But when I go into the back leg, I want to get a sense of dropping down through the leg into the ground. When the push comes, when the response comes from my leg, from the ground, I don't want to go up this time. My intention is to go forwards or backwards. This is a key exercise for various reasons in Tai Chi, not least because this movement, this transfer of a weight is a key factor in maintaining stability, mobility, just generally, not just in Tai Chi, but in our lives. And once again, raising toes and heel. So this is a very simple exercise. Doesn't take up much space, but it's really worth practicing on a regular basis, especially for people who are concerned about maintaining mobility, stability for one reason or another. As we get older in particular, it's very easily lost. And then stepping in. Trying to maintain the alignment of your pelvis. That's one of the reasons we're not taking a big step, by the way. When we take a stride, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but we will need to angle the pelvis. This is just a simple extension of the leg to its appropriate length. So for instance, I'm not trying to, when I step forward, to do this or anything like that. So you're walking on thin ice. You plant the foot, you test the ice before you commit your weight. And then either going forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the space. We're going to take a few steps through. You can have the front foot turned up, but not too far. I find a little angle there really helps to open up my hip and to allow the weight through. And then reversing or changing direction. All of the foot goes down, heel, press in and back. Take your time. Just give yourself time to settle. This is not a race. Settle into the back leg or front leg. Bring the other foot in, settle in again, and then take the step. And shake out. And it's good to just reflect on an everyday activity. Well, for most of it's an everyday activity. To simply walk is something that we often take for granted. It's a very calming, meditative effect as well. So again, it doesn't have to be complicated. There's something to, sometimes if you need to have this sort of sense of settle in, maybe your mind's a bit agitated, sometimes the best thing to do is something very simple, like if you can somewhere quiet, take a few steps. How does the foot feel when it goes down? How are you moving your weight, and so on and so forth. Now have your right foot forwards. And now we start to use that movement, that energy that comes from the legs to generate the movement in our arms. So arms hanging from the sides, weight in your back leg, push forwards, and as you do, just letting your arms swing through. And then ease back, letting your arms swing through. Nice and gently. Again, as though you're moving through water, so the arms are held back a little bit. Just fisherman cast the net. Generating the movement from the ground, but also aware of what's happening in your upper body. So for instance, there's many examples of this, but when I go forwards, my arms are held back just here, front of the shoulder. There's a gentle opening which contracts, helps to bring the arm through. Fisherman casting it like a wave flowing through the body. You're moving forwards and backwards. You're looking straight ahead. Your arms are swinging forwards and backwards. Now, remembering that when we turn in our center, we have an effect on our arms. We change the direction of movement of the arms. This time, as you go back, turn, so you draw your hands across the body, they swing down, they start to swing up, and just build on that, expanding in that rear side of your body, and then going forwards, turn out a little bit, expand here on the right side of your body, pushing the arms up and back, making a kind of sideways figure of 8 movement. Some people like to think of the infinity sign. The energy principally generated through that connection to the ground. Directed, shaped through the center of the body through which our intention is focused. So you're moving through water. The arms. At the end of the sequence of events expressing the movement that is already there. And shake out. Try that with the other foot forward. So from the parallel stance, turn your right foot out, step forward with the left weight back, and fisherman castanet. Trying to keep your attention gently focused within your body by paying attention to those small changes, particularly in the upper part of your body. Where do you feel the flow of the movement, the pattern of yin yang, extension and contraction? One more time, add in the turn, the figure of 8, coming forwards and back. And then this time you can turn the front foot out a little bit, you go forwards, and as you feel that expansion and the turn, bring the rear foot in, or again you could go backwards if that's where the space is, and through. Combining the previous exercise with the stepping we did earlier. And if it's comfortable for you, maybe just bringing the foot up. If that makes you feel a bit wobbly, I suggest you just leave the foot down for a moment. You will learn with practice to do this without the wobbling. So I'm going to change direction before I hit to run into the camera. And then bring a feet power. Give your legs a shake. Good. Rubbing your hands together. And then the pads of your fingers lightly tapping over your face. If you find that your attention has drifted off at some point, this is a good way of bringing it back. over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. It's also a good way of just losing some of the tightness that may have developed muscles. Onto the lower part of your back. Just as much of the back as you can comfortably get to. Going around your hips. And then your legs. Now, very light on your belly. And the upper part of your chest. And shake. Our closing exercise helps us to come back to these qualities. My feeling is that nobody ever keeps these qualities of mind and body consistently. They come and they go. Life does that to us. What we can do is learn to recognize that we're losing them and to come back to them. This is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. So you sink down, you push up, and as your arms rise, eventually you'll find yourself straining against gravity. Don't do that, let your elbows drop, bring your hands around, and then in, and then finally dropping down. So coming back into this more centered, more rooted posture, represented by the mountain, that spacious quality. And you might find it useful just to notice that. What is it that brings you back? I've described the pull of gravity through the body, but it might be something else, some other sensation, might be the image of the mountain, maybe even the breathing. For once, a breathing pattern, just take a breath in here with a sort of sighing quality to the breath, sinking down. These are little things that may help you in your day. When things get a bit hectic or you start to overheat, remember these qualities just to get a glimpse again of that quietness, that stillness, that calmness that we associate with the art. One more time. And stand. Shake out. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching and joining in. There's a class on Thursday this week at 4 o'clock. There's no classes next week, though. And also the week after is a bank holiday, so there won't be a Monday class then. Other than that, everything will be normal next week. Thank you very much again, everybody. Bye for now.